I was really excited for Amphoreus. I played on day one, I made theory videos, I made recap videos, and then I just fell off. Something about the story and the way it was told as the patches progressed just didn't hit for me in the way I thought they would. It also didn't help that around the same time, Genshin Impact dropped the absolute peak cinema that has been Nod Cry. But those thoughts can wait for another day because right now I have finally taken the time to catch up on Honkai Star Rail's Amphoreus storyline, and after finishing it, I think I've worked out why it just didn't click with me. Spoilers for the Amphoreus storyline are of course ahead, and timestamps are below in case you want to skip ahead to some of my spicier thoughts. I'm going to start by talking about the scale of the threat that faced Amphoreus, and whilst it isn't the primary issue the story faced, it definitely plays a part in the overall impact it created. Stories in all mediums often throw high stakes out there. The fate of the planet, the fate of the world, the fate of the universe! Or in this case, the fate of every cosmic civilization. And in Star Rail's case, it all just starts to feel a bit too big. I understand that Iron Tomb incinerating the data of every cosmic life form is bad, catastrophically bad. But I also can't comprehend the actual scale of that. I know that it's a problem and I want to stop it, but when I can't even begin to imagine what that looks like, it's hard to invest emotionally. Particularly when the visuals we have on screen during the midst of cosmic destruction are a number that's too big for our screen that quickly counts down to 0. We also see a small selection of characters who are at the forefront of the battle get incinerated very quickly. But what I don't see is the impact for my friends from afar. Is Hook the Great okay? What about my boy Boothill? Personally, I wanted to see the pain of what we lost in that moment so that the loss of so much life could feel more human and real, and not just like those lives were numbers with no meaning, even if that is simply how the Aeons view their universe. Speaking of scale, 30 million extrapolations. I think we heard them say that phrase at least 30 million times. And within those 30 million extrapolations, the Chrysos heirs experienced thousands of years worth of time. It's a lot. Which leads me to my next point: repetition. One of the most common complaints I've seen and felt about the presentation of Amphoreus' story is how long-winded it is. But it definitely feels intentional, and not in the sense that the flowery use of language is beautiful and poetic, even though it can be in parts. Instead, it feels like the constant repetition and roundabout way of talking is an attempt at expanding the scale, really making you feel the weight of 30 million cycles by using words that extend and delay the destination simply because they can't actually show you 30 million cycles over and over again without it getting a little boring. But here's the thing. Unlike the grand cosmic scale of all life, I can fathom the pain of an individual's life doomed to chase a cruel and predetermined fate that they will inevitably reach, regardless of the choices they make. Because the Chrysos heirs are the stars of Amphoreus, and I connected with their stories, not the idea of the big bad cosmic problem that was set up for them. No amount of fluffy exposition could change that. I just wanted a bit more show and less tell. And nothing demonstrates that better than the icons that were the Genius Society throughout the story. Their time in the game was often brief, and because of that, it got to the point. It hooked us, it excited us, it teased us, and then it moved on. But Madame Herder appearing on screen for small snippets of time wasn't the only reason her faction were the unsung heroes of the patch. No, the main reason leads me directly to my next point. It's no secret that the Amphoreus chapter of Honkai Star Rail is directly based on the Elysian Realm arc from Honkai Impact 3rd, considered to be one of the best storylines in any Hoyoverse game. And this isn't the first time Hoyo has copied someone else's homework. Look at any lore YouTuber for Genshin and they will articulate in great detail the deep and clear inspirations the story has taken from other literature of religious and philosophical natures, which is why so many theories end up landing fairly close to the truth. But these are examples of Hoyo reimagining stories and ideas through the lens of Teyvat and its laws. Now look, I am a writer and I love collaboration and iteration to make something the best it can be. Yet in this case, it kind of felt like all of the strongest versions had been used the first time around. Let's look at Elysia specifically. In Impact Third, she was with us from the outset, endearing us to her charms through her developing relationship with May. And over time, May comes to learn more about Elysia through interactions with her fellow flame chasers. Eventually, Elysia's identity as the hidden 13th Herrscher is revealed, a title that saw her sacrifice herself because her love for humanity was so strong that she wanted to give the worlds of the future a chance to fight and win. And while her status as a Herrscher came as a surprise, her love for her friends and the world was always present, because we see her demonstrate those attributes through her dialogue with May, which is why her final sacrifice in the present against the Herrscher of Corruption carries such weight. We've seen the beauty of her character in a personal way, and we can easily scale that to understand exactly what the world has just lost. And if we look at Elysia's counterpart in Star Rail, Cyrene, we see a lot of similarities and a lot of differences. Cyrene was also with the Trailblazer from the story's outset. The key issue here is we aren't aware that Mem is a version of Cyrene, so our endearment and the bank of feelings we are creating for the character start getting split once we introduce the actual Cyrene. In Star Rail, Cyrene is also a hidden 13th Titan, but because of the whole copied homework thing, it's not really a revelation, it's an expectation. One that comes quite late in the story, which forces her character to become a vehicle for sacrifice without having quite enough time to develop what that means for the combined identities of the pure child of Anasrava, known as the Ripples of Past Revelry /Mem/Cyrene. This left me feeling like they copied key plot points without copying what made them impactful. In Elysian Realm, the stories were interwoven and the dynamics between the characters brought you into their world, and as much as I really enjoyed a lot of the individual arcs within Amphoreus, their stories ended up feeling somewhat isolated for me, which caused that sense of disconnect. But what does any of that have to do with Herta? Well, when she shows up, it's to tell her Star Rail story, not retell her variant from another game's story. That's really where Star Rail has always shone for me, when it is just this big, cool space opera with interesting themes and mysterious characters, where the lore itself is handing me curious threads to unravel their meaning before they get their big reveal moment. In other words, maybe I'm a little bit of the problem with Amphoreus, because of the weight of my own expectations. I started playing Impact Third because of how much I loved Star Rail, and as I was delving into the game, the internet was hyping up the Elysian Realm arc, so my expectations were very high. I remember finally getting up to that part of the story, rolling my eyes as I clicked into the menu and thought, surely it can't be that good. And for me, it was. The characters were unique and interesting. Their story, tragic, heartfelt, and hopeful. So I came into Amphoreus with expectations that were potentially just too high, because they'd already been met once. I was confident they would be again. But Hoyo chose to give this arc the Flame Chaser name. So I think it was fair for me to compare the two executions. If I'd never played Impact Third, I imagine I probably wouldn't have cared as much, and my primary complaint would likely have just been the long-winded repetition that snuck into the year-long patch. Putting my expectations aside, there is still one aspect of Amphoreus that really bugged me, and it has to do with how the world handles our protagonist. In Honkai Star Rail, you are the Trailblazer. Our character has a past that they don't remember, and we choose the form they will take in this world, so they become a vessel for a Stellaron and an avatar for us. In that moment, the alternative Trailblazer ceases to exist, making our TBs feel like a self-insert for ourselves. This journey isn't just theirs, it's ours that we share. Plus, it's a linear game. We don't get to make sweeping, dramatic choices in our story, but we have always been given small dialogue options that create a certain personality for your Trailblazer. Although it's a small choice, it's one that reinforces the idea that their personality is mine. But the other Hoyo games don't really treat us like this to a larger extent. And to demonstrate what I mean, let's take a look at the other protagonists of the Hoyoverse, starting with Zenless Zone Zero. In ZZZ, you are the proxy, Phaethon. When the game begins, you get to choose who you will play as in this world from one of two options: the siblings, Belle, or Wise. Your nickname in the game comes from the name you give your online proxy account after the original Phaethon account gets hacked. Your sibling doesn't cease to exist just because you picked the other one. They have a role to play in this story, and so do you. Belle and Wise have unique personalities and a shared past, which provides intriguing threads for our story to follow, because they are characters that still exist in this space, even if we aren't there to guide them. Genshin Impact is much the same. You play as either Aether or Lumine, siblings from another world who become separated, and your quest to find them sets you off on the journey. Yes, people know you as your nickname or simply call you the Traveler because your legendary exploits precede you. But you are still Aether or Lumine, who has lived a whole life prior to the events of the game. Your sibling is a critical component of the story, and as they beautifully point out to you in the main quest, A Space and Time for You, it's only ever been about us. It's the Traveler's story, not mine. Then we have Honkai Impact 3rd, which does something very different again, but is quite important to my argument. In Honkai Impact 3rd, you are the captain on the bridge, and you bear witness to the stories and lives of the young Valkyries and the Dream Seeker as they move towards their destinies. As the captain, you are a silent observer. You have no choices to make because you are simply experiencing someone else's story from afar. Now coming back to Star Rail, as a member of the Astral Express, the Trailblazer's purpose in-game is to explore, understand, establish, and connect, as well as the unwritten 5th creed of salvation, which they note in the 3.7 quest. In every expedition so far, our crew have assisted in whatever danger has been present, but it was still never their story. It's Belobog's story. It's the Lawfu's story. It's Penacony's story. The Astral Express was just there and were able to help prevent those stories from becoming great tragedies. It's a purpose for our character that has always felt right because it allows them to sit somewhere between the captain and the traveler or proxy, a character who has a purpose to visit this world, but ultimately is kind of a witness, choosing to explore, understand, establish, and connect with people, and sometimes offering some salvation. They don't suddenly need to become the supreme guardian of Belobog or the general of the Lawfu for their journey to have purpose. They move forward. They are the Trailblazer. That's the whole point. And for me, Amphoreus threw that idea out the window of the Express. In my early speculation videos for the 3.0 storyline, I'd hoped that the Astral Express were just going to be observers in this grand tale, connecting with the Chrysos heirs and witnessing the truth of their sacrifices to save the world they all loved so much. But instead, the Trailblazer had to become the literal hero, the deliverer of their world, a part that apparently no one else could play. And I think that kind of sucks. Because it comes back to why Impact 3rd's Elysian Realm had a greater impact for me. May was a trailblazer in that story. She explored, understood, established, and connected, but she didn't leave their realm as a savior. She left as a survivor to live on and tell their story so it was never forgotten. And in every other planet, Star Rail was able to tell that kind of story pretty well. But for a world like Amphoreus, you can't, because the whole point is that no one else had ever been there. So we end up with a world where we have to become a savior. Salvation, not a witness. Throwing out the sense of self that I've created with my Trailblazer over the past few years and making it feel like a story that wasn't written for us. And to top it all off, after almost 4 years of content, we got the reveal that the other Trailblazer still exists. In what form? We don't know yet, but it all just left me wondering whose story is Honkai Star Rail. Until now, it had felt like a co-authored story between myself and my character, but now it kind of feels like Stellan Kylus's. Which is cool, but it's a reveal that creates questions that just feel kind of jarring considering I haven't felt like that throughout the rest of the journey. All of that said, I think there is a world in which Star Rail could have given the Chrysos heirs their moment to shine without them becoming a backup dancer for the Astral Express crew. But once again, maybe it's simply the weight of my own expectations or my familiarity with the flame chasers of Impact Third that have left me feeling like my Trailblazer wasn't behaving the way I would have liked them to. And maybe that's okay. To finish, I want to take a moment to shout out some of the things I did really enjoy about the Amphoreus storyline, because the reason I have such hefty critique is because I really do like this game, and I only have complaints because I care enough about it to think this deeply, and honestly, I think that's kinda cool. So here's to some of the individual story arcs. Treeby, you were such a blessing and your story was so tragic it hurt my heart. Ceredra, you sassy, delightful minx you. Castorus, you also stole my heart with your longing and empathy. Cypher, you were perfect and I love you. And my dear Anaxa, only you can out-diva me, the dramatic queen that you are. Also, not a hero, but Lygus. Anytime he came on screen, I locked in for his life-changing dialogue. And of course, Madam Herder, what did we do to deserve you in this game? Getting Polka Kakamon to show up for you? Inspired. So yeah, despite my complaints, I do have some fond memories of Amphoreus, but I am definitely ready to take off to a new world, especially considering it is the world of Elation, easily my favorite of the Eons, and I am excited to see the absurdity the path will bring to an exciting new cast of characters. Thank you so much for listening to my ramblings once again. I'm curious to know what you loved or didn't about Amphoreus, so let me know in the comments and, of course, tell me what you're looking forward to in 4.0. Disclaimer, I wrote this before the live stream came out, but there is only so much time in a day I can edit a video. Anyways, see you for the next one as we journey onwards to Plan Arcadia.